Tutti e tutte, grazie di essere qui e vorrei dire anzitutto grazie di essere qui per il terzo anno e per un nuovo appuntamento con la Davide Zordan Lecture, che è la lecture annuale del nostro centro di scienze religiose presso la Fondazione Bruno Kessler. Quindi un saluto anzitutto ai familiari di Davide Zordan che sono con noi quest'anno e un ringraziamento a tutti per la presenza, un saluto ai ricercatori di FBK che sono qui, di espressione di diversi centri, che ci fa sempre particolarmente piacere, e porto il saluto del presidente di FBK Francesco Profumo e del segretario generale Andrea Simoni, che si uniscono idealmente a questa nostra iniziativa. Avete ricevuto all'ingresso 3 testi, se non erro. Uno è il volantino di presentazione della conferenza di questa sera, e dirò qualche parola sugli altri 2 testi che avete ricevuto. Il primo dei 2 testi è un testo preparato da Paolo Costa, ricercatore del nostro centro. Gli sono particolarmente grato per questo sforzo che ci consente di dare sostanza a questo appuntamento, non soltanto per la presenza di uno speaker che ci stimolerà su un tema molto ricco, ma anche dare sostanza a questo appuntamento rispetto al contributo che Davide Zordan ha dato e continua a dare attraverso i suoi scritti al nostro centro, alla Fondazione e molto più in là, nel caso specifico a chi avrà voglia di leggere questi testi che sono stati raccolti da Paolo Costa, che poi ci dirà qualcosa di più quando verrà a presiedere questo pomeriggio insieme. Ma fin d'ora la mia gratitudine a lui per questa impresa e la mia soddisfazione per la produzione di questo volumetto, diminutivo per la quantità delle pagine ma non per la qualità. L'altro testo che avete ricevuto testimonia anch'esso della nostra volontà di fare di questo momento un momento di sostanza, un momento di contenuto, un momento in cui viene presentata l'attività del centro. Chi ci segue da qualche anno ricorda che il centro si è dato 3 anni fa una missione che lo integra all'interno della Fondazione Kessler e rafforza l'unità di intenti di tutte le componenti del centro e di chi collabora con il centro. Questa missione è stata definita come un lavoro di ricerca, ma è anche di promozione attraverso progetti di azione, non solo di ricerca, ma di ricerca-azione, di una migliore interazione tra religione e innovazione. Questa missione del centro va dunque molto al di là di un semplice tema di ricerca, è appunto una missione che continuerà a definire il centro per i prossimi 3 anni di attività, come ha confermato il Consiglio di amministrazione della Fondazione Kessler lo scorso venerdì. Ora, questa idea di religione e innovazione è stata un po' una scommessa 3 anni fa, abbiamo lavorato per verificarla, per testarla e oggi siamo in grado di condividere con voi anticipandone l'uscita, il testo a cui abbiamo affidato sinteticamente le nostre conclusioni di questi 3 anni sul rapporto tra religione e innovazione, con in particolare anche 10 raccomandazioni sulla ricerca e sull'azione in ambito di ricerca e innovazione. Ecco, non è un caso che questo documento venga presentato e condiviso questa sera, proprio perché desideriamo che un momento così denso di memoria, di ricordo e di testimonianza sia un momento altrettanto denso dal punto di vista del lavoro che si fa in Fondazione Kessler e che si continuerà a fare in Fondazione Kessler. Invito allora Paolo Costa a presiedere la serata, ringraziando ancora molto il nostro relatore di questo pomeriggio, ringraziandolo anticipatamente, ma fin d'ora per il tema che ci ha suggerito, e anche su questo devo ringraziare il dottor Costa per l'ideazione e per l'individuazione di un tema che ci consente di collegare questo nostro percorso a una riflessione teologica, il che anche ci è molto caro. Riteniamo che la teologia faccia parte dell'insieme dei saperi che vogliamo contribuiscano a questa tavolozza di colori che nell'interdisciplinarietà descrive e definisce il lavoro che facciamo qui a Trento sul religioso. Quindi grazie a Clive Marsh per essere venuto a presentarci un tema affascinante e stimolante, nel quale vedo, almeno all'inizio, prima dello svolgimento della sua relazione, vedo una bella sintesi del nostro lavoro sull'innovazione e di un lavoro teologico che, come dicevo, ha sempre fatto parte del DNA delle scienze religiose in Fondazione Kessler e continuerà a farne parte per il futuro. Grazie.
Bene, grazie al direttore Marco Ventura per le parole, per il sostegno all'organizzazione della nostra lecture, grazie a Clive Marsh per aver accettato il nostro invito, grazie a voi tutte e tutti per essere qui oggi alla terza edizione della Davide Zordan Lecture. Terza significa che sono passati ormai più di 3 anni dalla morte di Davide. La distanza temporale, oltre a stupirci per la velocità con cui si è prodotta, ci autorizza, credo, a porre sul tavolo una questione teologica difficile, che stava molto a cuore a Davide e che ha diversi legami significativi con questa occasione, con questa lecture e con l'esistenza stessa del Centro per le Scienze Religiose di FBK. Parleremo infatti oggi del concetto di salvezza, di che cosa significa interrogarsi, crucciarsi o impegnarsi perché le cose importanti della nostra vita non vadano perdute per l'azione congiunta del tempo e di ciò che siamo soliti rappresentarci come il male fisico o morale. Mi sembra che siano 2 i motivi principali che ci inducono a considerarlo un tema particolarmente adatto per questa occasione. Il primo è il destino stesso che è toccato in sorte a Davide che ci spinge a confrontarci con un aspetto costitutivo della condizione umana. La filosofa Simone Weil lo chiamava la sventura e lei lo riteneva qualcosa di più della sofferenza che pure tutti noi esseri umani prima o poi siamo destinati a conoscere per esperienza diretta. In particolare quando una vita si interrompe prematuramente e tragicamente è quasi inevitabile chiedersi Che cosa si salva di noi? Che cosa ci salva? E questa domanda però si può porre in molti modi diversi. Credo che si resti fedeli all'eredità intellettuale e umana di Davide se si evita di porre questa domanda in un tono tragico, cupo o esageratamente drammatico. C'era una finezza mozartiana in Davide, una capacità di affrontare la vita con una delicatezza che sfiora la grazia, che rappresenta un'eredità umana e intellettuale che con questo appuntamento annuale facciamo del nostro meglio per preservare e valorizzare. Parleremo dunque di salvezza oggi e lo faremo così come piaceva a Davide, tenendo i piedi saldamente poggiati nella nostra epoca, nel nostro tempo, che è, non serve neanche forse dirlo, è un tempo di grandi distrazioni. Per molti di noi oggi, direi, possiamo dirlo per tutti, almeno in parte, domandarsi come si possano salvare le cose che ci stanno a cuore e che vengono travolte ogni giorno dallo scorrere del tempo, un tempo che si fa sempre più impetuoso nella modernità, significa infilarsi in un ginepraio da cui preferiremmo tenerci lontano. Ecco perché la distrazione, il distribuire, cioè la nostra attenzione tra le molte gioie più o meno effimere che la vita quotidiana ci mette a disposizione, in genere sotto forma di consumo, ci appare spesso come un compromesso accettabile. Quello che ci chiederemo oggi, grazie allo sforzo e alla competenza di Clive Marsh, è se dietro questa spinta alla distrazione non ci sia solo vuoto di pensiero, ma anche nuovi pensieri, nuove esperienze, nuove pratiche che ha senso investigare. Se fosse ancora con noi, questo sarebbe stato sicuramente l'atteggiamento di Davide, che amava scavare dietro le apparenze con una disinvoltura che era fatta allo stesso tempo di empatia e di distacco ironico. Per darvi un'idea di questo delicato equilibrio, mi verrebbe quasi da definirlo acrobatico equilibrio, con cui Davide seguiva le tracce della fede dei nostri padri nelle peripezie della civiltà contemporanea, vorrei raccontarvi un aneddoto sull'ultimo anno della vita di Davide. Un mese dopo il terribile attacco epilettico che ha rivelato la presenza del male che poco più di un anno dopo se lo porterà via, io e Davide ci siamo trovati nello stesso ufficio, spalla a spalla, come siamo stati per anni. Era la fine di agosto. A un certo punto Davide mi ha rivolto la parola e, come facevamo spesso, ci siamo seduti faccia a faccia per gustarci uno di quegli spezzoni di conversazione che erano il momento più bello e produttivo della giornata per noi. E Davide mi ha detto: sai che mi è successo ieri? Me l'ha detto con un tono di voce neutro che non lasciava trasparire nulla di speciale. Ieri sera, mi ha detto Davide, ho deciso di guardarmi un film per rilassarmi e siccome ero indeciso su che cosa guardare, mi sono ricordato che prima di partire per le vacanze avevo cominciato a guardare un film interessante, mi ha detto. Me lo ha raccontato, ha detto era ambientato in una comunità di fondamentalisti protestanti del sud degli Stati Uniti e la bellezza del film, diceva Davide, era tutto nello sguardo del regista, che era uno sguardo non giudicante, rappresentava questa comunità, questo pezzo di mondo, questa forma di vita che è molto diversa, 1000 miglia lontana dalla nostra sensibilità e dalle nostre opinioni di persone bene educate. Mi ha detto Davide, sì, sai, però appunto avevo cominciato a guardarlo, si era fatto tardi, c'erano gli ultimi preparativi delle vacanze da fare, l'ho lasciato lì a metà. Così adesso sono tornato, ho deciso di riprenderlo, di metterlo e di guardarmi la seconda metà del film. E lui mi ha detto, sai che cosa succede nel film alla protagonista? Non ci crederai, ma la protagonista ha un attacco epilettico, le scoprono un tumore al cervello e il film racconta la reazione del marito e della comunità religiosa di fronte alla notizia e all'operazione a cui la donna viene sottoposta. L'operazione purtroppo non va molto bene e nella scena finale si vedono il marito e i seguaci della setta che intonano canti gioiosi insieme alla protagonista, ridotta in uno stato semicatatonico. Di fronte alla mia espressione sempre più sbigottita, Davide con il suo solito sorriso irresistibile, mi ha guardato negli occhi e mi ha detto: secondo te c'è qualcuno che ha cercato di dirmi qualcosa? In quell'equilibrio funambolico tra serietà e ironia, cesellato da questo interrogativo finale, c'era tutta la grazia intellettuale di Davide, di cui, se vi interessa, appunto, potete trovare un'ulteriore testimonianza nel piccolo libro che abbiamo prodotto per l'occasione e che vi suggerisco calorosamente di leggere. Contiene 4 suoi brevi scritti sul cinema che vi faranno scoprire, o se già li conoscete, riscoprire queste doti umane e intellettuali di Davide. Il rapporto che molte persone hanno oggi con l'enigma della propria esistenza assomiglia all'atteggiamento ambivalente e sospeso con cui Davide ha accolto questo episodio che in un'altra epoca sarebbe apparso come un segno inequivocabile della presenza del divino. Ai nostri giorni questi episodi, che un tempo erano eloquenti, sono diventati delle tracce labili in cui ci si imbatte nei contesti più improbabili e che rappresentano una sfida alla nostra capacità di pensiero e di significazione. Non tutti certo hanno la forza d'animo, la curiosità e l'apertura mentale che ha consentito a Davide di percorrere sentieri laterali e poco battuti in un'epoca che effettivamente oscilla tra le tentazioni speculari della divagazione e della semplificazione brutale. La nostra lecture, per come è stata pensata, vuole essere uno spazio ospitale per questo tipo di riflessione teologica senza schermature protettive. Diciamo che, facendo tesoro della lezione di Davide, ci proponiamo di guardare dritto negli occhi le innovazioni che la società contemporanea ci propone quotidianamente, senza snobbarle, ma senza farci ipnotizzare dal loro statuto di novità o pseudonovità. Per fortuna non siamo soli in questo compito non semplice di rendere giustizia alle molte cose importanti che sono in gioco quando ci chiediamo che cosa significa oggi interrogarsi su ciò che merita di essere salvato, su che cosa possa significare oggi essere salvato, su luoghi spesso imprevedibili in cui questo bisogno o desiderio di salvare o essere salvati si manifesta nella cultura contemporanea. Abbiamo infatti oggi con noi il professore Clive Marsh, che ringrazio ancora calorosamente per aver accettato di tenere la Zordan Lecture 2018, e che da poche settimane ha pubblicato un libro che ha per tema proprio la teologia della salvezza, riletta con gli strumenti moderni degli studi culturali. Non mi resta allora che passare a lui la parola, ringraziandolo per la squisita gentilezza con cui ha accettato il nostro invito, anche in circostanze non semplici, in cui questo invito è stato recapitato. E grazie a voi di nuovo per essere intervenuti qui così numerosi. Dopo la lezione del professor Marsh ci sarà spazio per qualche domanda dal pubblico. Entro le 19 dobbiamo però concludere l'evento, ma vi invitiamo a fermarvi con noi anche dopo la fine della lecture per il rinfresco che si terrà nella hall della Fondazione. Buona lecture.
Well, thank you for being here. I want to first say how delighted and honoured I am to be giving this lecture, only the third in the series, I'm aware, in memory of Davide. It's rare in theology and religious studies for a lecture series to have such a contemporary, lively and forward-looking focus, and particularly to provide an opportunity for popular culture to be taken seriously within the world of the arts when it's brought alongside theology. This is, it seems to me, such a series, and so I'm honoured to be contributing to it. So I'm very grateful indeed for the invitation. As I begin, I offer 2 words of apology. Firstly, that I have no Italian. I shall be using 2 words of Italian only in my text, which I hope I shall pronounce appropriately when the time comes. That's my first apology. My second apology is for Brexit. Any of us in the kind of role that I'm playing now are just in a state of continuing embarrassment and almost shame. And that's all really there is to be said. It's just a waste of everybody's time, and I apologize. All I wish to do this evening is to demonstrate to you that Christian theological imagery and language is alive and well in the West, despite the struggles which most churches are having to maintain their numbers and to remain a major contributor to developing social, ethical, cultural, and political life. I shall provide some examples of how theological language appears in Western culture, but ask the question how such language is actually being used and whether it actually carries identifiable theological meaning and whether that matters anymore. In undertaking that exploration, I shall note how interest in redemption and salvation may be interweaving with an interest in happiness. Whilst happiness may seem a very weak term to bring alongside a weighty theological concept such as salvation, I shall show that we need to look closely at how and why it and related terms may be appearing together in Western culture. And I'll conclude with some short summary reflections of an explicitly theological nature about salvation and happiness. Though I can't in a short lecture fully defend all that I shall want to say in summary, I nevertheless hope that I will have stimulated your interest enough to want to explore further, to test out whether what I'm saying may have some truth within. First then, we must look at how and where references to salvation and redemption appear in Western culture. And for the purposes of this lecture, I'll use the 2 terms, salvation and redemption, mostly interchangeably, simply because public and popular culture do not normally make any major distinction between them, not surprisingly. Salvation may be considered the more general term, and redemption perhaps the more specific, though this isn't really an issue in general public discourse. Redemption proves itself to be more common perhaps because we live in highly financially oriented times, and hence a commercial image, the notion of buying back or being bought back, may be grasped more readily in Western culture. And I understand from my translator there's a deep problem in how redemption as a term gets translated into Italian. So I don't know whether this is the point at which the translator wanted to clarify that, but I'll have a short pause while I have a drink so that she can address that translation question. So whether or not this is so, the kind of examples which are ready to hand can be found in all sorts of different cultural worlds. Worlds such as sport, politics, and television. Here are just some very concrete examples that I have just lifted from the British press over the years. A football manager who had failed at one club was successful in securing a managerial role at another club. A newspaper reported this as him being able to have a shot at redemption. That's the relatively unknown football manager on the left, if you're interested. I'll give an extra prize at the end for anyone who actually knows who it is and can tell me later. A politician who had been disgraced because of a behavioural lapse and had been found guilty of a criminal offence needed to seek to restore his reputation. This was termed a movement from rogue to redemption. A famous American golfer who had lost the chance to win a major tournament with a collapse of confidence on the final hole, recovered his form at the next tournament and was said to have found redemption. These are all quite common examples and featured in British newspapers between 2013 and 2015. You would, I'm sure, find many more in British and US newspapers more recently. Indeed, just as I was putting the final touches to this lecture, I looked at my Sunday newspaper for just 8 days ago on December the 9th, and just with my normal read through, obviously you never read every word of a Sunday newspaper, but even in the sections of the newspaper that I normally read, I found 3 references to redemption. In an article on films, in a TV review, and in a review of a live music concert. So that's as recently as 8 days ago. Redemption is used time and time again in different ways. It would be interesting to know if Italian newspapers would likewise use such language. Redenzione or salvezza. There we are, that's my attempt at Italian. I'd be very interested to know afterwards if those 2 terms do get used in these kind of ways similarly in the Italian press. Prominent in such uses of the term redemption is often that people who had failed have a chance to recover and find themselves again and to reassert themselves in some way. Though there may be an element of help from others, being given a new job, for example, in the case of the football manager, the main emphasis is upon what those who have a chance of being redeemed may do for themselves. Clearly then, from the start, there is, from a theological perspective, a problem with the way that redemption language is being used here. Whereas in Christian understanding, salvation is to be received as a gift because of what God has done, the notion that people redeem themselves is a very alien idea. Even if the language presents a powerful resonance with the notion of being rescued from a deep and damaging low point and brought up again to a measure of health and well-being, the emphasis upon human effort creates a difficulty. Let me offer a further slightly extended example from the world of film. The 2009 film Crazy Heart is based on a 1987 novel by Thomas Cobb and is the story of the later years of a country singer who has fallen into hard times because of alcoholism. The film follows his attempt to recover his career after 4 divorces and to recreate the experience of his earlier life through returning to a life of touring and concert giving. In the process of doing this, he meets a journalist with a small son who interviews him for an article she's writing and with whom he falls in love. Though helping him to reassess his life and enabling him to resolve to become sober, they don't end up staying together permanently. They part on good terms. I use this film not because it can be claimed to be a great film, although it did win an Oscar for its lead actor, Jeff Bridges. I refer to it for the simple reason that it is explicitly marketed as a film about redemption. The DVD is thus intended to be bought by people who want an uplifting story of someone whose life was turned around. And the DVD box actually says to the potential purchaser, this is a film about redemption. The film reports on a person who found a way of fending off destructive tendencies and of moving to a more hopeful and healthy way of living. The narrative shape or arc of a story which attracts the verdict that it is a redemption narrative plots the movement from a negative situation to a more positive state with ups and downs on the way, with some external human intervention, but also some kind of inner change in the life of the main character. The film's plot could then be said to slot into a basic shape of a salvation story. A character is saved from something, here alcoholism, for an amended life, here an alcohol-free existence with restored relationships, rediscovered creativity, and improved material well-being. By external intervention, here the goodwill and emotional attention and support of a new friendship. Into a more supportive network of professional contacts and friends. So there's a dynamic here being saved from, for, by, and into. So the film can be seen as a redemption story because of this turnaround and this basic narrative shape. Unlike the journalistic examples I gave earlier, there's more to work with in this film. There's an extensive storyline which we may call a drama of redemption, which makes it an uplifting film. Yet there's little in the film version of the story which makes any connection to theological readings of redemption. Nor can it be said in any unqualified sense that the book on which the film is based is about redemption understood in a religious sense, even though the book does contain more content than the film that invites a theological interpretation of what the story presents. But even so, it's difficult to claim that there is much that's explicitly theological about Crazy Heart's redemptive element. Incidentally, that's the fourth on my heading here. Then the guy in the bottom right is Jeff Bridges playing the character Blake in the film. So he is quoted in some of the blurb for the advertising for the film, the marketing, as somebody who has one last chance for redemption. So again, we have an example from recent Western culture of an explicit reference to redemption, though one where the potentially theological aspects of what might be expected where such a term is used are simply not to be found. The focal point of what occurs is admittedly more nuanced in that the person seeking and finding redemption does get help from other people, but we're still in the realm of human efforts. There's not much sense of redemption being a gift. Human agency is paramount. Just one more but quite different example of how terms relevant to the whole field of salvation crop up in everyday life. The frequency with which reference is made to saving the planet. Here the context is environmental concern, response to climate change and ecological activism. The meaning of salvation here is rescue, preservation, conservation, protection. Again, the agents are human. In the powerful words of environmental activist Robert Swan, as we see here, the greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. This is, of course, a summons not to be inactive and may not carry any overt theological implication for the speaker. It would be easy to add, though, and though Swan himself doesn't do this, even God. In other words, don't leave God to do the saving. It's striking then that although redemption terminology may be more commonly used in reference to human rescue and transformation, and salvation language more prominent in relation to the natural world, common to both is the sense that it is humans who will do the saving. Such an urgent provoking of human activity does, of course, seem wholly appropriate here. The thought that Christian theological insights might be brought to bear to stifle or question human activity to help save the planet, or, with reference to our earlier examples, to refrain from working hard to better oneself and recover from past difficulties, would be rather odd. And yet, to suggest that human beings contribute nothing to salvation is an appropriate and long-standing Christian conviction too. Ultimately, in Christian understanding, salvation is all of God, brought about in Christ and recognized as such with the Holy Spirit's help, even when human agents are involved. So what sense are we to make of that now, we might ask? To expect such a detailed and precise theological exposition of salvation's working at every point, though, in media and popular culture, where redemptive experience and activities identified, would be rather unrealistic. Furthermore, though salvation is God's work, much theological discussion in Christian history, as we'll all be aware, and certainly when it comes to tensions and differences between Roman Catholic and Protestant accounts of salvation, have revolved around exactly what and how much human beings do in their receiving the salvation which God offers. Even so, all Christian traditions would be at one in resisting the secularization of the accounts of redemption which are prominent in the examples I've cited. And even if it's true that, of course, human beings have to be engaged in saving the planet, there are perhaps other remarks which need making about how and why such salvation is needed in the first place. So if there are ways in which theological language and understanding can find a way of connecting with what Western culture currently calls redemption or salvation in order to gain hearing, a fully or solely human notion of salvation won't do. I turn then second to what may be called bridge concepts between the kind of examples of where salvation language appears in Western culture and the concerns and insights which theological accounts of salvation could bring to public discussion. It's here where a whole list of important terms and concepts come into play, which have different levels of theological resonance. And I'd love to be able to hear how all the next list of terms that I am using get translated in Italian, but I'll have to wait till later, because I'm sure there are things which are close and some which may not be easy to translate in exactly the same way. But here's the versions in English of what I'm calling potential bridge concepts. Happiness, well-being, health, contentment, joy, and flourishing all present themselves as positive terms for what Western citizens often say they seek. The question arises as to whether any of these equates with or approximates to salvation or redemption in the positive sense, or whether attention to them would enable a point of connection to be found between the rather loose and inadequate references to redemption we find in media and popular culture and the richer and enriching definitions which theology at least claims to be offering. Well-being is big business, and understandably so. It's become a catch-all term, bringing together a range of forms of health: physical, emotional, mental, even spiritual. The notion of being well no longer simply means not being ill. It means thriving in a number of ways. In my own university in Leicester, for example, the well-being services offered within and by the university include health services, counselling, emotional support of staff and students, financial benefits, and advice about structuring the hours of one's job to secure a work-life balance. All of that comes under the heading of well-being. Often linked together with happiness, well-being appears now to denote a state of contentment and personal satisfaction which one might be encouraged to aspire to. Now, happiness may seem a little tame by comparison, but it too is big business, very, very big business. William Davis has written a helpful but critical account of the happiness industry, showing how the impact of measurement and monitoring of consumer activity has taken effect in our lives. If well-being and happiness are linked, we do have to be careful to try and ensure that what we want and what may be good for us and for others may not just be the result of what we are in fact being duped into buying or wanting. I'm sure there must be a link here with Harvey Cox's lecture 2 years ago on the market having become God. I'm sure there's a direct link here. When the quest for well-being or the search for happiness are too allied to marketing activity and consumer demand, then we run the risk of seeking things which provide only temporary pleasure and not lasting fulfillment. The psychologists and philosophers of happiness call this the difference between hedonistic theories of happiness and emotional state theories. Theologically speaking, then, it's likely that if we are to make use of understandings of happiness at all within how we grasp and present salvation today, then it will be to emotional state theories that we are likely to be drawn. Whatever salvation may be, it must surely lead to a state of deep, lasting contentment. One of the problems, though, of Christian understandings of salvation is that they have all too often focused on what we are saved from than on what we are saved for. Therefore, even though we are now presented with all these possible bridge concepts between contemporary uses of the term redemption and salvation and what, in a positive sense, a transformed, recovered, rescued life might be like, Christianity has perhaps been less good at characterizing the positive end of the salvation process. I think that's probably worth repeating to make the point, because there's a sense in which this is at the heart of the recent study I've done of this whole topic. Christianity has perhaps been less good at characterizing the positive end of the salvation process, being more likely throughout its history to characterize salvation in terms of what lies beyond death, in heaven, for example. Christianity has, for most of its history, been reluctant to attach too much significance to what goes on in salvific terms within this life. The slogan used by the International Development Agency, Christian Aid, some years ago, "We believe in life before death," was striking in its bluntness, but played into a general cultural context in which people, especially outside of churches, people might have thought that Christians were only or primarily interested in what lies beyond physical death, our own or the death of humanity itself. To switch to paying close attention to this present life, then, means selecting from the bridge terms available one which can relate to the positive aspects of what a Christian understanding of salvation is seeking. Following the recommendation of the late Canadian-British feminist theologian Grace Jansen, I have for some years used the term flourishing to characterize Christian salvation, without neglecting the fact that there are negative aspects of experience in the world to be overcome. Emphasis upon flourishing focuses on new life, on creativity, and on justice, the things that one is saved for rather than what one needs to be saved from. Connecting with classical Greek interest in the good life, the language of flourishing shifts focus to the quality of life which is to be gained. As a summary term of the joy, well-being, happiness, fulfillment, and contentment which can be available both to humanity and to the whole of the natural world, flourishing invites us to be constructive about what the results of salvation are, and in a manner which does not postpone the benefits to a future life. The challenge, though, is to work out how to address the question of what the benefits of salvation are without turning an interest in salvation into a form of consumer culture. This is the first of three drawbacks to focusing on what one is saved for rather than what one is saved from. An interest in flourishing could quickly become a question of what's in it for me, or what will I get out of it, rather than being a means of identifying and addressing weaknesses in humanity and obstacles to flourishing which need facing. Flourishing becomes a form of self-interest, a concern for my well-being and my development. This can potentially even exclude a concern for people around us. What about the flourishing of others? It may disappear. This leads to a second drawback. Flourishing has such a focus on what is positive and what is hopeful for the future that the scale of what needs to be overcome can easily be underplayed. Whether we're talking about moral or natural evil, it's easier for those already living quite comfortable lives not to see as clearly as they might what they need saving from. I think this is actually the force of Jesus' saying in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 2, verse 17, if you want to follow it up. I quote, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. I've come to call not the righteous, but sinners." End of quote. In other words, the wealthy and the comfortable are perhaps prevented by their wealth and comfort from seeing what's wrong with them. The notion that all human beings may need saving in some sense may be harder for the socially, economically, and politically comfortable to recognize than those who are already fully aware that they are in some kind of difficulty or need. And then the third drawback of a focus on flourishing and what one is saved for becomes evident when one links it with what is currently a very fashionable emphasis, not just in Christian ethics, the cultivation of virtues. The virtue tradition, promoted in particular by Aristotle and fostered through a noble Christian tradition, through Aquinas and into the present in both Roman Catholic and Protestant forms, is indeed a distinguished tradition. It reminds us that faith entails practice, not just belief, and that character has to be formed and shaped so that one doesn't just know about compassion and patience and justice, but actually practices them and comes to be a person who acts compassionately, justly, and with patience. Cultivation of virtues is not simply a gathering of a list of skills, it's a shaping of a person and becoming a particular kind of person. Now that's fine, but to an austere Protestant such as myself, the tricky thing is that this approach can too easily reintroduce the concerns I raised in the first part of the lecture. In the same way that the general secular uses of terms like redemption and salvation can suggest that all is dependent on human effort, so here too the sense in which any salvation of any kind is a gift from God could get lost in the fulfillment of a human task of cultivating appropriate virtues. Paying attention to flourishing, then, what one is saved for, must not simply become a program of human activity for living a better life, even in the form of a set of spiritual disciplines. So if a life of flourishing is not to be such a program, what do Christian theological insights have to offer to the ways in which redemption and salvation are talked about in wider culture? In particular, what do they have to offer in a way which connects with the more positive range of bridge terms I've just referred to, so that the practical, positive outcomes of salvation, understood as a gift, are recognized, though are not reduced to some kind of special offer or bargain that a consumer might be pleased to have secured at a local shopping centre. To conclude, let me offer 3 theological insights which seem to be especially needed in the West at the moment. It may seem odd that I've spoken for so long already about salvation and yet have failed to mention the word sin. This could be regarded as part of our current theological malaise in the West. We avoid the topic of sin too often, or allow it, like salvation and redemption themselves, to be defined for us within the culture around us. In this case, sin becomes sins, a list of moral misdemeanors, often to do with sexual behavior. Sin is, though, of course, better defined more generally as anything and everything that blocks the capacity of God to work in the created order and in the lives of human beings to bring about the kingdom or realm of God. In order to do its work, the concept of sin needs to be very broadly defined and not be confined, as often happens in the West, to individual pride and desire to be God, significant though that definition is. Sin may comprise inner turmoils of many kinds, given the way in which inner damage may affect us in the form of addictions, lack of confidence, or self-absorption. Sin can also have its impact by being sin against people, so that people need saving from the consequences of abusive behavior upon them. This insight opens us up to the recognition that while sin does have an internal individual dimension, there is also a structural social dimension to sin. We all live within sinful contexts, and the societal and political structures within which we are located will themselves have an impact upon us from which release is needed. Structures of economic inequality are sinful, given that they depend on a wide disparity between rich and poor. The poor are not sinful because they are poor, but they are sinned against and need saving from their poverty. Any flourishing which becomes possible may not, admittedly, come about through economic activity alone. But recognizing that we live within sinful structures is a means by which more dimensions of salvation are acknowledged as necessary than simple inner change within the lives of individuals. Unlike Grace Jansen, then, from whom I gained the insight that we should move to talk about flourishing, I do want to keep a sense of what one needs to be released from in order to flourish. And I do want flourishing and salvation to be kept together. I also want the notion of sin not to be neglected, but what we need is a broad definition of sin, so that the full range of aspects of salvation can be identified too. That leads to my second theological observation. Though there are lots of forms of sin to be dealt with, it's right to start from the positive. Flourishing is best talked about more so that the hopeful future that God wants for the world and for all creatures within it can be presented as a vision to be aspired to. It is indeed best, perhaps it's even only possible, to identify sin as sin and to address it when one has seen the vision of what God has in store. We can only appropriately recognize the situation we are actually in when we have seen the promised land and note how different it is from what we experience now. The switch to the language of flourishing is, though, a challenge to Christian thought and practice and to Christianity's reputation for being gloomy and preoccupied with sin. But we do have to be cautious when we talk of aspiring to a vision we have glimpsed, even when given to us by God. Flourishing may take the form of transformation and growth or development in such a way that what one needs saving from may seem or become less important. But we need to be careful how we understand flourishing to relate to current expectations. For example, those about excellence and perfection. I don't know what the situation is like here in Italy, in business, public and health services, and in education. Indeed, perhaps in all forms of organisational life. I'm taking a bit of a risk here. But in the UK, language of the quest for perfection is so great that it puts employees under immense pressure. I'm just guessing because of the international way in which theories of management and organisation cross boundaries that there are similarities here in Italy. Here's a case where a wholly appropriate mechanism for checking efficiency and encouraging the smooth running of an organisation can quickly become an oppressive, punitive tool. All the time, ironically, a glimpse of what could be better, where there can always be continuous improvement, becomes itself a tool which contributes to structural sin by crushing the very people who make an organisation work. any reference to people's flourishing in their work has to be sure that it addresses the structural sin which is always prone to turn employees into being cogs in a machine. It's worth bearing all of this in mind as we consider the glimpse we may have of God's intended future, lest we turn God's future into a human improvement program and just absorb it within this general quest for excellence. A third and final theological observation, which comes about strongly when current uses of salvation and redemption terminology are put under a critical theological gaze, and when a decision is taken to articulate theological notions of salvation from the perspective of flourishing, is that one has to ask the question, who is flourishing, and who is intended to flourish in any notion of salvation presented. Here, the location of human beings within the whole created order becomes especially significant. Saving the planet keeps human beings firmly in their place as having a limited, if important, role within what happens to the earth. I was struck forcibly very recently by the observation of a good friend of mine who's a theologian, who suggested the likelihood that humanity will die out and then the rest of the created order will in fact continue without us. I don't know whether that's kind of a common assessment of the situation among ecologically aware theologians, but it was a very stark and sobering warning. By contrast, redemption language, as we saw, was used mostly in relation to resurrecting sporting careers and thus on human beings able to have a new start. Salvation understood as flourishing will, however, be inadequate if it's left as an individual matter and as pertaining only to oneself in isolation. I cannot really take my own salvation, understood as my own flourishing, wholly seriously if I do not attend also to the flourishing of my neighbour. In biblical tradition, God does not appear to handpick individuals to save outside of the context of a community: Israel, people of God, church. And even then, the boundaries of those defined communities are porous, and God seems equally concerned with the well-being of the aliens as with the members. Concern for the foreigner punctuates the Bible, particularly the Hebrew Bible and the first 5 books, quote after quote from Exodus and Deuteronomy expressing concern for what's going to happen to the outsider. Nor, as we've seen, does God neglect the rest of the created order. It's clear that we are to take our responsibilities for looking after the earth very seriously. It's there in the first chapter of Genesis. And we're given that responsibility because we're made in God's image and are close to God. Psalm 8 gives us a very clear presentation of that. The introspective conscience of the West, as Krista Stendhal referred to the lens through which we can so easily misread the Judeo-Christian tradition, can prevent us from being reminded that if we're to talk of flourishing, then we are to look at how all human beings and all creatures may flourish. Salvation is not about the inner well-being of isolated human individuals, but the full bodily flourishing of all creatures. In this context, the notion of all creatures flourishing also invites the question of how the planet is saved or healed, where the grammar, the passive voice, becomes important and may even be a divine passive, as well as what part humans play in the vital saving activity. A strong sense of humans participating in the fending off of structural sin, merciless exploitation of natural resources, or excessive carbon emissions, for example, serves then as a reminder that humans must act, but as they do so, that they must remember that they do not own the earth. Such a bold and comprehensive vision is, of course, at some distance from journalistic accounts of famous golfers needing to relaunch their careers or fictional country musicians dealing with their alcoholism. But we need those accounts as the human stories in relation to which we can help the drama of salvation, the recognition of what the Spirit of God, as Christians know God in Christ, is actually doing in the world, to enable that drama to become visible. Theology does not work in a vacuum, but in relation to real people in concrete situations. Those of us who keep on wrestling with the words of theology, which we hope may sometimes be words from God too, be that in church, in academy, or in public life, those of us who work with these words need to keep on doing so, in order that the words do not get misused, and so that the riches of what the tradition holds within it, in understanding and shaping a better life for people, have a chance of being more widely accessed and used. It is in that spirit that I understand this lecture to have been founded, and I hope that my brief comments have enabled the intentions and concerns of the one after whom this lecture is named to have been continued. Thank you.
Bene, il tipo di esercizio intellettuale a cui avete assistito è chiaro, è un po', avete presente quando si va in montagna ci sono quelle giornate un po' nebbiose, e più o meno le nostre vite sono così, no? Quando ci occupiamo di queste cose c'è un'intuizione che ci capiamo quando parliamo appunto di questa costellazione di concetti, di nozioni, salvezza, redenzione, o anche in italiano si direbbe riscatto. Ne parliamo, li incontriamo costantemente nella vita quotidiana, quando leggiamo i giornali, vediamo un film. Però appunto abbiamo bisogno di concetti, come li ha chiamati appunto Clive Marsh, di concetti ponte per riuscire a metterli bene a fuoco questi concetti, perché non è proprio tanto chiaro che cosa intendiamo per salvezza, riscatto, redenzione. Allora abbiamo anche lì una quantità di sinonimi: felicità, benessere, appagamento profondo, anche forme vere e proprie di salvezza fisica, come adesso diciamo le sfide ecologiche come il global warming, sono forme vere e proprie di pericolo, no? Da cui attendiamo una forma di salvezza. E però appunto anche quando troviamo un termine che ci sembra meglio degli altri riassumere il significato di questa esigenza di salvezza, come in inglese flourishing, no? Che ha questo carattere originale di condensare l'idea di una fioritura umana. Clive Marsh ci ha mostrato che persino nel concetto di fioritura, che è un concetto così seducente, si possono nascondere dei problemi, e questi, forse sorprendentemente per qualcuno, però trovano nella teologia un terreno fertile per essere pensati, perché parte del problema quando noi interpretiamo la salvezza in termini di fioritura è proprio che, appunto, come ha mostrato Clive Marsh, fatichiamo a darci risposte su problemi come, insomma, quello che potremmo chiamare la peccaminosità strutturale delle nostre vite sociali, e il problema anche, diciamo, più generale del carattere non solo individuale della salvezza, ma di un carattere comune, collettivo. E questo, diciamo, ci riporta in un certo senso al punto di partenza. Io adesso ho fatto questo piccolo sforzo per darvi il tempo pensare a delle domande per consentire a Clive Marsh di riprendersi dopo l'intervento. Adesso abbiamo a disposizione un po' di tempo per le vostre domande su questi temi così importanti. Ecco, dovrebbe esserci un microfono e la prima domanda.
Vorrei segnalare che nella nostra storia trentina il termine redenzione ha avuto un grandissimo uso. Noi siamo le terre redente dal 1918 in poi, Trento, Trieste, e questo è stato un concetto fortissimo e moltissimo utilizzato nella storiografia, nel giornalismo, nella politica, anche nelle leggi, nei testi giuridici, proprio terre redente. Noi quasi non ce ne ricordiamo più adesso di questo utilizzo, ma è stato molto intenso. Lo potrei aggiungere agli utilizzi segnalati dal professore prima. Poi sul discorso del professore sono molto interessato a questi concetti ponte, no? E però ringrazio il professore anche di averne mostrato, come dire, la problematicità o la possibile insufficienza di questi. Del resto mi sembra questa una questione teologica perpetua, eterna, insomma. L'agostinismo, se vogliamo andare indietro, ma poi anche il professore stesso si è riferito al protestantesimo, e allora io potrei così accostare il dibattito anche nel Concilio Tridentino su questo, e poi all'interno dello stesso cattolicesimo il giansenismo. Mi sembra che nella storia della teologia questo tema, se ci si autoredime, diciamo, o se è Dio, e non lo penso in termini esclusivi, questi due termini, ma insomma ha occupato molto la teologia.
Visto che abbiamo tempo possiamo forse rispondere domanda dopo domanda.
Yeah, I obviously knew nothing about the local sense of that meaning of redemption in terms of this region, but I'd be interested to know from that the way in which redemption is used. Is that helped or hindered by the fact that redemption is a theological term? Does that mean, because of that regional sense of the way in which redemption is used, redemption is less likely to have a theological resonance in wider use? Or does the theological definition drift over into the way in which the region sees itself because of the language of redemption being used?
Io ringrazio molto il professor Marsh per una serie di sottolineature, in particolare per quel che attiene al rapporto e al significato di peccato, ma nello stesso tempo credo che quanto ho avuto il piacere di ascoltare da un lato rafforza l'esigenza di riprendere la lettura del lessico della salvezza, anzitutto neotestamentario, in particolare tra le versioni evangeliche e gli Atti degli Apostoli, nella dimensione di salvezza come pienezza di vita recuperata. Penso per esempio al racconto che esiste tanto nel Vangelo secondo Marco quanto in altre versioni evangeliche della cosiddetta donna emorragica o emorroissa, intrecciato con il racconto della risurrezione della figlia di Gairo, in una dimensione, è soltanto un esempio evidentemente, di una recupero di pienezza di vita che certamente mi pare di cogliere in parte riprende una serie di valori ponte che il professore ha segnalato, ma nello stesso tempo permette di evitare alcune, almeno a me pare così, alcuni aspetti negativi, in qualche modo deprivanti, che certe concezioni di salvezza, talvolta variamente fondate o infondabili sulla Bibbia, hanno proposto. L'altro aspetto riguarda il tema del peccato. Ancora una volta, ascoltando il professor Marsh, mi è tornata alla mente la necessità di valorizzare quel significato etimologico di peccato come il mancare il bersaglio dell'esistenza, il mancare il bersaglio della propria prospettiva, che dall'ebraico al greco è maggioritario, fondamentale nella riflessione che ne emerge. Allora, e concludo, questa prospettiva di salvezza diventa estremamente significativa e nello stesso tempo problematica guardando al futuro, ma nello stesso tempo richiede almeno mi pare di poter dire così, richiede una rifondazione costante a partire dalle fonti in una logica promozionale, positiva, che credo sia molto importante, direi, per la contemporaneità attuale.
Question though. Yeah, I have nothing really to add. That I suppose the only possible danger of a definition of sin which overemphasizes failing to hit the mark is that, again, that can become a way of emphasizing human striving rather than accepting salvation as a gift. And I think any construal of a movement towards salvation which puts too great an emphasis upon what humans achieve in their own strength is going to be misguided.
Qualche altra domanda?
Can I ask a question of the audience?
Salve, buonasera.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, prego. Grazie. Mi è parso interessante l'accenno che faceva all'inizio della sua lezione, in cui in questa accezione inglese del termine redenzione si faceva riferimento ad un accento una connotazione quasi finanziaria, economica, e mi veniva in mente che lo stesso termine greco tetelestai è compiuto, delle ultime parole di Gesù, tutto è compiuto, in realtà ha la stessa accezione economica. Era la parola che liberava lo schiavo, era la parola che liberava il debito, il riscatto economico, finanziario veniva espresso con questa parola. E quindi la domanda è questa: in questa differenziazione tra la concezione, diciamo così, comune del termine redenzione e la concezione teologica, volevo chiederle se il ribaltamento di prospettiva non sia da operarsi in maniera più radicale, cioè non è semplicemente un collocare Dio in chi non lo colloca, o magari mettere in questo altro, che può essere la moglie del golfista, mettere Dio, piuttosto invece di operare un ribaltamento, cioè in questo è compiuto di Cristo sulla croce, in qualche modo è come se il fine venisse prima della strada, cioè è già stato tutto compiuto e quindi a noi aspetta qualcosa che in realtà è contrario ad una logica umana. Ecco, volevo sapere se, innanzitutto, se ero stato chiaro e poi se si poteva rispondere a questa domanda.
I'm not quite sure I've grasped all the question here, but I'll have a go. I think you're drawing attention to the enormity of the gulf between everyday uses of the term and where the theological definition of redemption is starting from. And I think that's right, there is a huge gulf because, divine logic undermines what human beings would like to conclude about what we are able to achieve. but I think we simply have to keep on, as theologians, wrestling in public life with the terms that are important to us. And that's why we need these, not just the bridge concept, but we have to be involved in the public discussion of where the theological terms appear, whether or not they're being used in satisfying ways. We can't suddenly turn them into public discussions that we might want the public to be having, but they are, and they're not just opportunities for us to jump on our soapbox and say what we want to say, but they are public arenas which become very important contexts in which theological conversations have to happen. And I'm frequently astonished in my work in popular culture and the arts as to where and in what forms these conversations happen. I've been reading film reviews for 40-odd years since I was a teenager, and it is staggering how many theology-related discussions happen within film reviews, because the film critics start using theological terms, whether they're adequate in the way they use them or not, that's neither here nor there. The fact is, the terms are used, and therefore people interacting with the film critics have created a public arena for public discussion. So those are the kind of contexts, and we have to do that, whether we like the way in which the theological terms are first used or not. They are important arenas.
I was wondering about, any changes that you observed during your research and in writing your book about the relationship among suffering, sacrifice, and salvation or redemption. Because I have the impression in a secularized world, it's more and more there is not a relationship, but at some point in some religious contemporary sacrifices, as what terrorists consider forms of sacrifice, this idea of a salvation and a personal and social redemption returns. So I ask you if you meet at some point this kind of, or consider this kind of elements. Thank you.
I think people looking at my book will argue that the whole tenor has become very weak in addressing the whole area of suffering and sacrifice, because what I'm trying to do is emphasize the dangers of emphasizing suffering and sacrifice and underplaying the positive side. But what your question, there is an important footnote somewhere in the book because you simply cannot address this topic without being aware of what terrorists say when they themselves are self-sacrificing, believing that redemption is theirs for their act, which obviously rationally is easy to say this is a distorted way of viewing the entire correlation between sacrificial service and salvific reward, for want of a better expression. And yet it's there across all religious traditions in some way. But of course, in the act of a terrorist, it's being skewed in a very tragic way, both as a religious idea and as an action. But what your question making me wonder is whether, why is it at the moment that I, as a Christian, feel the need to explore this topic and write as a book which is wanting to try and counterbalance some of the overemphasis of my own tradition on the negative aspect of salvation. And it could be, it strikes me now, it could be that precisely I'm trying to make adjustments within my own tradition because I'm offended by what happens to religion generally when that kind of activity is practiced in the name of religion. That could be it. So the simple answer is, I think I'd be weak myself in my own account, but that's possibly the background to why I've written the kind of book I have at the moment. Yeah, thank you.
Una questione sull'uso del termine flourishing. Stiamo al secondo delle tre riflessioni conclusive che ha proposto. Lì diceva being positive, ma questo being positive non deve diventare una quest for perfection. E ha fatto riferimento al modo in cui viene organizzato il lavoro in sanità, scuole, istituti di ricerca, perché poi è assolutamente trasversale. E questo mi sembra un punto da approfondire, perché è vero che nel linguaggio per progetti, che è assolutamente egemone, e su questo ha ragione, si instaura una logica che ha un po' a che fare con una versione indebolita e perversa, in realtà, di salvezza. E cioè le persone sono ostaggi, e per questo ci vuole il riscatto, sono ostaggi di una logica che impone dei fini. Queste persone devono, appunto, la perfezione, devono perficere questi fini. Se li raggiungono, almeno provvisoriamente, sono salvate. Allora, sono perfettamente d'accordo che questo è un esempio perfetto di senso perverso o diciamo fuorviante di salvezza. Quello che mi chiedo è se il termine flourishing coglie bene quello che questa declinazione di salvezza non riesce a esprimere, perché mi metto sempre dal punto di vista dell'impiegato che deve raggiungere fini. Cioè, in realtà questo impiegato vuole essere liberato dai fini. Cioè, c'è una versione, se vogliamo, passivizzante nell'idea di salvezza e di redenzione, che forse in flourishing sfugge un po'. Questo.
Okay. There's so much that could be said about organization and management. Yeah, flourishing is not a good term to go alongside the monitoring of achievement, I admit. That's partly why I choose it. That's not to say that organizations shouldn't have monitoring and targets, key performance indicators, and all those kind of things that we all know are there. But I wrestle myself within the world of higher education, but it's there all the way through any education system. How do you measure that someone has improved? How do we even decide what improvement would be if you genuinely took every individual pupil or student seriously in their own right as individual human beings? We know we can't create educational structures in that way, but actually, for someone to flourish, to move someone from A to a point B for themselves in their human development and education development may be quite different from somebody else who is starting further along the line and maybe have a more distant point B. But for the people to flourish may be quite different terms of measurement, but they'd still be flourishing. But we couldn't run an education system like that. We couldn't run an organization like that. But I still think the term is appropriate, but it doesn't fit with measurable outcomes. I accept. But I think salvation is more to do with non-measurable outcomes. It's about fulfillment and joy.
Nel linguaggio sportivo italiano, la parola salvezza si usa frequentemente per una squadra di calcio che non viene retrocessa. Ha ottenuto la salvezza. Ora in Inghilterra è successo che a opera di un allenatore italiano, la squadra di Leicester non solo non sia retrocessa, ma addirittura abbia vinto il campionato. È stata una fioritura inattesa che ha inorgoglito una città, ma anche in Italia eravamo orgogliosi di questo allenatore. Però siccome l'anno dopo invece c'è stato il crollo, invece di considerare la vittoria dell'anno prima un dono di cui gioire, il crollo ha portato al licenziamento dell'allenatore disperato, una disperazione diffusa. Ecco, ma io volevo aggiungere questo. È in corso, in questo mese di dicembre, nel programma di Radio 3 Uomini e Profeti, le lezioni di un teologo, Vito Mancuso, usa con frequenza la parola salvezza, è arrivato a metà, alla seconda lezione, usa con frequenza in un programma dedicato alla bellezza. Cioè lui tende a identificare la salvezza con la capacità di godere della bellezza, delle bellezze naturali, estetiche, ma anche della bellezza dell'umanità in quanto tale. La ringrazio.
Mm-hmm. Would you like me to comment on Ranieri first? We were very proud, and there's a huge mural of Ranieri on one of the Leicester buildings. It will remain there despite the poor treatment he was given by the owners at the time. People in Leicester were as puzzled and baffled as you were here, because his achievement was considerable. There was, as you can imagine, there was huge rejoicing in the city. It was a phenomenal achievement. Yeah. Beauty. Yeah. One of the chapters in my book is about how salvation is discernible in and through beauty, always recognizing that aesthetic and affective, so emotional perceptions and apperceptions of salvation interweave together. So people have emotional responses to fine works of art, and often they can't be put into words, and yet they are, and that comes, and we must be very, very careful in the world of theology, not only to think that what sometimes get called experiences of transcendence are only identified with works of high or classical art, musically or visual. We have to be very, very careful, because it's very difficult to compare experiences, but sometimes those same experiences or similar experiences may be able to be accessed through what may be considered quite basic forms of popular culture. So, and certainly popular music. So we have to be careful what art forms are used, but when people have what can be termed experiences of transcendence, at the very least they may be intimations of divine encounter with the divine, and they can't necessarily be easily put into words. But again, they become arenas within which people want to try and find out, what is this experience I'm having? Why am I feeling like this? Where is this taking me? So that, I think, relates to the aesthetic sense, sensibility through which salvation can be accessed.
Clive, you mentioned redemption and salvation have survived in popular culture and media culture. Somehow despite the decline of churches. Okay. And then you also mentioned the possible gap between human agency and God. I mean, God-given salvation, or salvation as a gift of God. Is there a relation between the two? In other words, wouldn't be the survival of redemption and salvation in popular culture, wouldn't that come at a price of a sort of secularized idea of salvation where God basically fades away. Just a question or a provocation. Or put it otherwise, where would you locate God and a possibility of God and the divine in the way popular culture handles, incorporates, and sort of preserve the discourse on salvation and redemption? Thank you.
I think the danger of popular culture's handling of the divine is it may sound a strange response, but is still too supernatural an understanding of God. So, in a way that's actually not very helpful, because in the same way as it was right to say, it's too simple to say God has no hands but our hands, because hopefully God has more hands than just human hands. And certainly that there's such a close, it has to be a close interworking between human agency and what we may term divine activity. But the challenge for human agency is which visions of the future are we going to actually take seriously? Which given traditions of how the future may be created are we wanting to slot into? Which narratives are we going to work with about how the future will come? And speaking as a liberal Protestant theologian, I actually hope that those narratives don't have too much of a sense of a wholly unrealistically supernatural divine agent. But I very strongly want those narratives to include massive reserve about what human beings can do simply and utterly by themselves. So we have to have within our narrative some kind of sense of human limitation that's very strong, whilst knowing that the future is not simply ours to create. How I would put it.
Buonasera, mi scusi, potrebbe per cortesia specificare un po' meglio la relazione tra salvezza intesa in senso personale e salvezza invece intesa in senso collettivo? Perché ho come l'impressione che per molti problemi della modernità non possa sussistere una salvezza personale se non c'è una salvezza anche in senso collettivo. Penso per esempio ai problemi ambientali, penso alla conflittualità sociale data da cause insomma di redistribuzione della ricchezza. E mi viene da pensare per esempio che nell'Antico Testamento la salvezza era proprio intesa per il popolo di Israele, no? Quindi una salvezza inteso in senso collettivo, mentre oggi mi pare che si tenda di più ad intenderla in senso puramente personalistico. Grazie.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know whether when you say the focus is on individual salvation, you're talking about an Italian context. You would say that's the case now.
Sì, penso al global warming, per esempio, al problema ambientale, uno per tutti. Non può sussistere una salvezza di una singola persona o di un singolo Stato, perché sono problemi che sono relazionati ad una comunità, quindi se si attivano delle azioni di tipo collettivo si può far fronte al problema, insomma, no? E in questo senso volevo capire meglio quello che lei può intendere come relazione in senso personale. Mi sembravano gli esempi anche portati durante la sua esposizione fossero di tipo personale, no? E come invece questa si può relazionare con una salvezza di tipo collettivo, per cui per certi problemi non c'è altra via. Grazie.
I would agree, and that's what I was trying to argue, that we have to start from the sense of, start from the salvation of the planet, salvation of humanity within it, and then any definition of salvation starts to make sense. But I don't want us to lose a sense of what individual sinfulness means, because individuals still need to be aware of their own individual limitations. And if individuals do not have a sense of the salvation of all, then they are not going to be concerned about the flourishing of their neighbour. And that itself, therefore, becomes part of their own limitations. They're not recognising that sin has both an individual sense and a societal, structural sense to it, if they're only concerned about their own individual well-being. But I do want people to be concerned about their own individual well-being too, because it is precisely that there's a connection between them. If I only think of my own well-being, then I'm actually disregarding the well-being of the planet, or the flourishing of my neighbour, or the flourishing of the whole of humanity within the world. So the two do belong together all the time. And I have to say, I haven't held my hand up as a Protestant, obviously. We've made things pretty tough for the history of Christianity by contributing in a rather major way to the individualization of salvation. I acknowledge that, so we've needed some correction, whilst hopefully in the process also contributed to the sense in which individual awareness of salvation is an important matter.
Lei all'inizio del suo intervento ha chiesto scusa per la Brexit. Ecco, sono rimasto molto, molto colpito, impressionato favorevolmente da questo chiedere scusa da parte sua. E allora mi sto chiedendo, proprio in questi giorni noi stiamo soffrendo per la morte di un nostro concittadino, un giovane, Antonio Megalizzi, che era un giovane appassionato dell'Europa. Mi viene da chiedere quale potrà essere la salvezza dell'Europa, la redenzione dell'Europa. L'Europa sta vivendo momenti tremendi per tanti motivi, non solo il terrorismo, no? E il fatto di chiedere scusa individualmente fa pensare che anche i cittadini hanno una responsabilità per la situazione che ci troviamo a vivere. Il prossimo anno ci saranno le elezioni in maggio per il rinnovo del Parlamento europeo. C'è un grossissimo rischio per una forte, ipotizzata avanzata dei paesi cosiddetti sovranisti. Ecco, volevo chiedere, lei come immagina una possibile salvezza per l'Europa? Grazie.
Thank you. Great question. I wish I had an easy answer, but it will not surprise you to hear me say one of the clearest ways in which the salvation discussion relates to the whole Brexit and European situation is about how we handle the issue of hospitality and how we address patterns of migration, because that is directly to do with issues about who is accepted and on what basis people are accepted across borders. And it's too simple to say it's all there in the biblical tradition, but it really is. And it's about the challenge to how you deal with the people who are not your own. And so one of the most shocking things to me as a British person is symbolism of what we've done in trying to pretend we can go it alone on the basis of what's happened in Europe over the last century. It's just shockingly offensive to the rest of the European Union, and yet we try and say we are and will remain as hospitable as we always were. It's just not the case. So the issue of hospitality and borders and welcoming, that's the true test, and that's the creating of a context in which salvation has more of a chance of happening, because we're enabling neighbours to flourish.
Forse posso approfittare della mia posizione per fare una domanda collegata a questa ultima, perché quando si parlava delle terre redente, quel tipo di redenzione era strettamente legata ad un investimento molto forte sull'idea di nazione. Era l'epoca dei nazionalismi e ci si aspettava dalla appartenenza nazionale una forma di salvezza. E adesso il termine che usiamo per indicare quel tipo di umore è sovranismo, in effetti è stato anche menzionato. E il professore Marsh non lo può sapere, però questo termine è diventato talmente evocativo nel nostro dibattito che persino un importante istituto di ricerca italiano, per descrivere la situazione psicologica dell'italiano oggi, ha usato un'espressione quasi comica: sovranismo psichico, psychic sovereignism. E in realtà col termine sovranismo psichico volevano cogliere un elemento che secondo me ciascuno di noi percepisce nel contesto sociale contemporaneo. In italiano usiamo l'espressione, spero di non mettere in difficoltà l'interprete, incattivimento generale, no? Il fatto che nella nostra società sono emerse delle passioni tristi, proprio dei sentimenti, il risentimento è venuto proprio a galla in maniera molto forte, no? Emozioni tristi, passioni tristi, risentimento. Anche la Brexit credo sia espressione proprio di una forma di riscatto negativo, un dire no, diciamo addirittura un far saltare il tavolo come una forma di espressione di salvezza. Forse in parte mi ricollego anche alla sua domanda, cioè che la salvezza possa esserci non nel flourishing, ma semplicemente nel deflourishing, nel mandare all'aria un po' tutto, no? Soprattutto questa spinta a perfezionarsi, ad essere migliori, a incivilirsi anche per tanti aspetti, no? Mi domandavo se questo elemento aggiunge alla complessità del quadro sì, un tema molto difficile da trattare, un nodo difficile da sciogliere, però importante per qualsiasi discorso sulla nostra salvezza contemporanea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if you're right that this is a kind of the negative aspect of a psychic sovereignism is an interesting word. Then arguably a narrative of salvation should be able to correct a bad self-perception even when it becomes a kind of national narrative or national malaise. But I think that does relate to. I mean, we wrestled obviously within the UK as to who's, and it was literally about. It gets down to the very issue of how people use the word story. Stories can be true when they're fictional, of course, as we all know, but sometimes stories are polarized with history, and history are facts and stories are not. But it was certainly the case in the build-up to the referendum vote that we have. Whose story did you most believe? Became the issue. And of course, what quickly happened then after the result of the referendum in the UK, then the stories that were told were unpicked a little more. And the things that were presented as facts were often disclosed not to be facts. And so accounts were disentangled. But then that does emphasize the importance of the stories that we tell, whose stories we listen to, which narratives we choose to live within, And of course, there are those that would say, whether or not we are religious believers or not, what religions do is provide very powerful stories for people to live within. Whether there is a God or not, at the end of the day, you know, the religious stories remain there, and if we're going to dispense with the religious stories, then which stories are we going to put in their place? Because we will have powerful, powerful stories by which we choose to live. And so I suppose that's what slots in here, about when those stories are about nations as well, or ethnic groups, they're going to be big and powerful identity-shaping narratives. And we have to be clear about where we're getting them from and whose we're trusting and what we're going to choose to live within. That's, I suppose, how I'd respond.
Spero di interpretare l'opinione di tutti. Se ringrazio di cuore Clive Marsh per il suo contributo, e se mi consentite proprio l'ultimissima parola, e legandole anche alla mia introduzione, credo che questa occasione di riflessione comune su un tema del genere è un bel modo per rappresentare in maniera icastica come forme di fioritura collettiva in fondo possano anche emergere da delle tragedie individuali, e questo secondo me è per noi un motivo di conforto, e possiamo però continuare questa conversazione anche dopo, tutti insieme in un contesto ancora più informale. Vi ringrazio di essere venuti e ringrazio ancora il professore Marsh per quello.
L'ho detto all'inizio, domani pomeriggio alla stessa ora abbiamo anche un nuovo seminario con una collega che è qui questa settimana con noi, Stephanie Baer, professoressa all'Università dello Utah, Brigham Young University, con cui abbiamo una collaborazione importante, e nel nostro ciclo più direttamente, esplicitamente dedicato all'innovazione, Stephanie, la professoressa Baer, ci darà un seminario sul discorso sociale contro l'innovazione. Quando noi lavoriamo sull'innovazione qui non abbiamo, come dire, un'agenda sciocca o superficiale per l'innovazione di qualsiasi cosa a tutti i costi, ma al contrario vogliamo essere una piattaforma di riflessione critica sull'innovazione, e domani questa sarà un'occasione molto preziosa. Siete più che benvenuti anche a tornare domani. Grazie ancora a tutti.